Welcome to another day of talking about what the hell's going on here. What's going on here? So, the 79 Ford, I have wanted one for quite a while. All of a sudden they're going crazy in price. So I thought, I'll buy some cheap stuff. Buy a inexpensive cab, which was still $5,000. And build my own, because these things are going through Barrett-Jackson for hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And granted, they have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in them as well, but I'm like, I could build one much cheaper. However, I should have probably just set my wallet on fire and gone and bought a new truck. But be that as it may, here's what's going on with Buford, the 79 Ford. So I talked about it a little bit yesterday. Originally, I was setting this 79 crew cab, which is pretty solid, onto an 06 6.0 liter 6-speed chassis. Ended up finding an 09 chassis. I bought a whole truck, but got this chassis because it is completely, it's spotless. It's perfect. It has tiny little bits of surface rust, and that's it. So, pick this thing up. Not going to run a 6.4. Not going to go to the trouble of swapping a 6 liter into another chassis. So I picked up 32,000 mile 24 valve just to keep a little bit of unreliability in the equation. I wanted to get a VP44 pump truck because people hate them, and also I didn't want to buy an overpriced 12 valve and make 190 horse. 24 valve, pretty stout motor, pretty easy to tune up to make 500 horse without too much hassle. So that's my plan. Goals around 500-ish horsepower and 800 foot-pounds or so. Still mated to a ZF6. This one's out of an 08 6.4 truck that I bought. Made it up using this adapter plate from a fellow named Mike Fuchs, Fuchs, just like the Porsche wheels. And so he makes all this stuff in-house. So he machined up this plate. He made motor mounts. He has this spacer, which is for a flywheel if needed. I used a different flywheel, so I didn't. He also makes, I think they're up in the truck, but a bracket to mount the 6.4 accessories onto the Cummins, which I'm not going to go with since I'm not putting it into a 6.4 cab. I don't really need to worry about that. I can just probably go with like a one-wire alternator and do all that nonsense. So he also makes the adapter, I guess, to mount the 6.4 fan, which I'm also not going to go with because I can walk over here and show you this 6-liter radiator. So I ordered a Mishimoto all aluminum radiator to try to cool it down because the 6.4 radiator would not fit in this thing. So went that route to keep it cool, and going to get yelled at, but going to run an electric fan, at least try and see if it works. If not, I'm falling over stuff all over the floor because I need to clean. If not, then I'll go to mechanical fan, but I think big electrics will keep it cool. So, set on this chassis. Had to use 6-speed cross member because it is different from the automatic, which this truck was originally automatic. And also the drive shaft is about 4 or 5 inches too long. So it needs to be shortened up a little bit. I need to take that off, take the drive shaft shop tomorrow. Otherwise, pretty much stock chassis. Like I said, chose this chassis because it is spotless, rust-free. Also got lucky, it has new brakes. Brand new rough country lift, which puts this thing sky high. I'm not super stoked about that, but it is what it is. So that's the basis of what's happening there. To make the VP44 injection pump live, got a fast fuel system, and also installed a fast sump, which you can see down in the tank there. Pretty sweet piece, and there's a perfect flat spot on the Super Duty tank where it mounts up. So it took 10 minutes to install it. Got the fast on. It's not hooked up yet because I was welding cab mounts. I didn't want to melt brand new lines, but Basically, it'll run right up into where I took off the stock lift pump. So that'll plumb right into the VP44 and give it fuel. I still need to fix the patch plug, put a cover on the block mount where the mechanical fuel pump would go on a 12 valve. There's a plate. I just need to make that real quick. And provide it with fuel, make a return line back, and I will have hopefully a running Cummins. Get the drive shaft back, I'll be able to set the cab back down, and this thing will move under its own power because pushing it around sucks. The thing weighs a ton. So, kept the rear cab mounts on the frame and using the same bracket that I made on the 6-liter frame, but it's now just welded straight to the cab and it'll just sit on here. Maybe not the perfect solution, but it retains all of this stock, and cutting these off is a pain in the butt. I know that because I did it up here. I just cut off the cab mounts, moved them up and forward, and they match up to this. I had to notch these out just a tiny bit. I mean, I took maybe a quarter inch material out and the bolts drop right in and it bolts down. So that basically gets that to that. Still running a 6-liter power brake booster, which all plumbs into the Hydro Boost and the 6-liter, which is the same, I guess, as the 6.4 clutch slave cylinder. So that will all plumb in. The 6.4 shifter is actually way better in clears, so all that's good. And I need to rebuild the firewall that I cut out, which in hindsight I shouldn't have done, but it is what it is. So I need to rebuild the firewall, get all that back together, and come up with a throttle pedal setup to pull the throttle on this thing, which makes zero sense that we have a cable throttle connected to a TPS that then sends electrical signal to the injection pump. So that needs to have something done with it. Might try to do a drive-by-wire and program it. There's a dude doing it, but I need to talk to him. Otherwise, need to do something with turbo piping. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get an elbow set up that'll clear everything, probably, and then into, I don't know, like put a band on here and run a silicone elbow or get an actual elbow to run up to intercooler, which I have no idea what intercooler I'm going to run either, probably 6-liter because I have several of them. And exhaust, it's actually good. A lot of people will flip, I'm sure most people know this if you're watching this, but a lot of people flip these manifolds upside down, put the turbo up higher, and get more clearance. I might do that, but I don't know if I have to. Other people will run like a different manifold that moves your turbo back and forth. I prefer to have the turbo in the middle, but it's just me. So that is pretty much it with this thing. So I'm going to get the drive shaft off, take it and get it shortened, and hopefully by next week be able to set this cab back on and have this bad boy driving. So that's what's up with Buford, the '79 Ford Crew Cab.